Welcome to 2024, which means we are kicking off the brand new challenge that we are doing here at Grains and Grit, the Grains Explorer Challenge for 2024. And what better way to kick it off than to start with an ancient of grains, barley. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel we talk all things real whole grains from a biblical perspective. I teach you how to mill those grains, baking the bread from scratch, incorporating real whole grains into your life, and most importantly about the daily bread that Jesus told us to be praying for. As I mentioned, this is the first video of our new challenge, the Grains Explorer Challenge. So you may have participated in the Make Bread 365 Challenge for 2023. And this is similar, but instead of focusing on a bread each month, we are focusing on a specific grain each month and all the wonderful recipes that can come from that one grain. This is not your typical grains. We're going to be challenging ourselves and exploring new grains that you may have not heard of or even tried. So each month I will be doing here on YouTube a Meet the Grain video. I will be introducing this grain to you, what it's good for, all the details. But for the full adventure for the Grains Explorer Challenge, you need to be checking out the Grainy Bunch and all my wonderful grainies over there. That is our exclusive supporter group for Grains and Grit, and they will have the full adventure experience with the Grains Explorer Challenge. For those of us who are diehard grainies in the Grainy Bunch, you will be getting extra recipes, extra videos, including a bonus video where I teach you an actual whole meal incorporating whatever grain we're doing this month. On top of that, there are normal advantages of being a member of the Grainy Bunch. So for all the wonderful details with our Grains Explorer Challenge, all you got to do is head on over to grainsandgrit.com/grainsexplorer, and that'll also give you the details about the Grainy Bunch as well, sign up, so on and so forth. Okay, so January 2024 for our Grains Explorer Challenge, we are going to be talking about barley, which you have probably heard of, but maybe not really familiar with this absolutely fascinating grain. So in this video, we're going to be discussing the history of barley, the different types of barley, and there's like 7, what type of barley you should be using, the health benefits of barley, and of course, what to use barley for. So first up, the fascinating history about barley. When I say it's an ancient of ancient grains, it really is. Many people, when you hear ancient grains, you think of einkorn, kamut, spelt, but most people don't ever even mention barley as an ancient grain. But it is not only one of the first cultivated grains that humans were cultivating when we started with agriculture, which, by the way, was right after the fall. We have been farmers ever since, but that's a different video. But when we look at the Bible, this is actually specifically mentioned by name, where we do see wheat a lot used in the Bible, but it does not specifically state emmer, kamut, spelt, einkorn, but it does specifically mention barley many, many times, and it has a lot of significance in the Bible. First mention we hear of barley is in Deuteronomy 9, where Moses is with Pharaoh, and it's the whole "let my people go" thing. And we specifically see barley mentioned for the first time in our King James Bible in Deuteronomy 9, when it talks about after the plague with the hail mixed with fire, that it specifically talks about the flax and the barley being harmed. Specifically in verse 31 of chapter 9, it says that the flax and barley was smitten. So there we have it, barley right there in ancient Egypt, very early on in the Bible. And sorry, I mentioned Deuteronomy, I meant Exodus. So there we see it, second book of the Bible, and we have barley mentioned, and we have had it ever since. We also see it as one of the foods mentioned in Deuteronomy 8, talking about the foods of the promised land, along with olive oil and honey and wheat. It talks about wheat and barley specifically. We also see it as one of the foods used in Levitical sacrifices. And then we also see it where it's kind of used as a currency, and in other cultures it was used as a type of currency. It specifically talks about in the Bible how an ephah of barley equals so many shekels. On top of the Bible, archaeologists were able to see this in many other type of ancient cultures. It is one of those grains that it is seen pretty much throughout the world. Over in Asia, we see it in China, we see it in Finland. Of course, ancient Rome used it. I mean, it is just one of those grains that we've known about for a long time. Now let's fast forward to modern times and what barley is generally used for today and how it fits in our modern world. Now, a lot of people know of barley in two ways, one for animal feed and then also in beer. So crazy enough today is that it is actually the fourth largest grain that is cultivated behind wheat, rice, and corn. So you have wheat, rice, corn, barley. And as of 2020, Russia was actually the main producer of barley. So nowadays, we do not consume barley as a regular part of our diet, at least here in the United States. 70% of barley now is actually mainly used for animal fodder. The other 30% is used in fermented type goods like beer, whiskey, and then just consumed as normal. But where it used to be a huge part of people's diet, not so much anymore. Now, in case you're interested, where it likes to be grown is it likes to be grown in more temperate type climates in the summer and more tropical climates in the winter. It does fine in cooler environments, but not a winter hardy crop. So if you are interested in being extra and growing your own barley, that is something to consider. In the United States, half of barley is actually produced for livestock feed, especially in the northern climates. I think in the South, a lot of ours is corn, where up north, where barley is mainly grown, barley is typically used. And fun fact, in Western Canada, so for my Canadian viewers, Western Canadian beef, it is actually marketed that they are generally barley finished, meaning whether they were on grain or grass, they like to be finished off with barley right before being processed for beef. And that actually is what gives them a very distinct flavor. So again, it's a fascinating grain, absolutely fascinating grain when you really look at the history and to know that we are pretty much eating the same grain today that has been here pretty much the whole time. It truly is a wonderful connection with pretty much all of our ancestors, no matter which country you're from. Now, another side note that I did not mention is barley is not a gluten-free grain. It does contain gluten, just like wheat and other grains like that. So do keep that in mind. We're going to take a quick moment to thank the sponsor of today's video. This is a new sponsor, 4Generations Organic Farms. Personally, I love ordering straight from the fields that my wheat berries come from. They are organic farmers, which means that they believe in regenerative farming and they rotate their crops and they even give their soil a rest to ensure maximum nutrition. They have actually been on the same family plot since the 1800s in Oklahoma. They, of course, offer many different sizes ranging from 5-pound burlap sacks all the way up to 5-gallon buckets, which are sealed with oxygen absorbers. They've actually cultivated their own wheat berries. So even though you are buying hard red, hard white wheat berries from them, it's their own strand. So those unique flavors are going to be coming out in your bread. And another cool fact about them, they supply wheat berries to King Arthur flour, which I know is a big one, as well as other major organic flour brands. So good news for us home millers, we can completely cut out the middleman and just buy those wheat berries straight from the farmer themselves and mill it into delicious whole grain bread. So to check out 4Generations Organic Farms, just go to grainsandgrit.com/4generations and just enter in grains and grit for the coupon code to receive 10% off your first order. So now let's talk about the types of barley that you can find on the market. So there are actually 7 types of barley type food that you can purchase. Of course, the first one is hulled barley. That's where we're going to hang out. That is what we have here. It's basically the equivalent to, the wheat berries that we are getting. It is barley where the hull has been removed. Now, do know if you're buying animal feed, barley, a lot of it still has the hull on, so something to consider. So you're actually looking for hulled barley, and that's what we're using. This is what we throw into our grain mills. It can be milled up just like wheat. It looks a lot like wheat, which is why we label everything very well. So that's where we're hanging out with for this challenge, is whole barley. It's the whole grain version of barley, where it has your germ and your bran. It's just the inedible hull that it grows in that has been removed. The second one that you can possibly find is actually whole-less barley. So pretty much the same thing. The only difference is that it's actually a genetic difference in when it's grown. Typically when barley is grown, the hull is very closely attached to the barley, where hull is loose. So the hull generally just falls off in normal harvesting. So it is definitely still a whole grain form, just the hull has been removed. It's just a looser hull. So if you find hull-less barley, it's the same stuff pretty much as whole, just a different variety that makes it easier in harvesting. The third one you can find is barley grits, and all that is just what it says, where it's barley that has been cut up and is now used in like a grit type format. From what I can tell, it's kind of, I think it's more like steel cut oats, where they're taking the barley, just chopping it up. So I think more like steel cut oats, not grits, but that's a minor distinguishment in my southern brain. So that's what that is. Now, do you know, if you find barley grits, read the back of the label, because some are made from pearled barley, which is not a whole grain, and some are made from hulled barley, which is the whole grain form, which we'll get into pearled barley in a bit. Number 4, we have barley flakes. As it sounds like, it is basically rolled out version of barley, where we roll out. Typically they are steamed first and then they are rolled out flat. Very similar very similar to how we do the rolled oats. And then of course we have barley flour that you can buy. Obvious, barley that's been milled into flour. Done deal. I'm not really sure if that's truly a whole grain. That was kind of difficult to find information about. So be sure to read the label and check it out. But of course, we should be milling our own. You should not be buying barley flour. You should be milling your own. All right, next up, we have pearled barley, which is the most common. This is actually something that you can find in some grocery stores. And pearled barley is basically like the white rice version of barley. It's the white flour of barley. It's where barley grain has basically had the bran removed. It is polished or pearled. You have a barley that is not a true whole grain. About 40% of that bran and germ has been removed, and you have that equivalent that it actually cooks faster. So many recipes online I find that call for barley. A lot of them say pearled barley. You can for most of them substitute a whole barley just fine, but just know whole barley, like brown rice, takes longer to cook than pearled barley or white rice. Now, I will say this in slight defense of pearled barley, because of how barley is. It's unlike wheat berry. When we make wheat berry and we mill it and then we remove the bran and germ and we make white flour, that means the nutrients and the fiber has been removed from wheat. That is actually not the case when it comes to barley, because with barley, the fiber is throughout the kernel of barley. So pearled barley still retains a lot, if not all, of the fiber of barley, but the other nutrients have been removed. And with pearled barley, depending on how white it is, some bran may still be left behind. So something to consider, you at least still get the fiber of pearled barley, but you should still be using whole barley to get that true whole grain barley. All right, and then number 7 is you have quick pearled barley. Quick pearled barley is pearled barley that has been partially cooked and then dried. So it's now like instant rice, where now it cooks even faster in about 5 to 10 minutes because it's already been slightly cooked. But again, that's pearled barley that's been slightly cooked. So I would definitely just avoid that altogether. As always, read the labels, especially when you're looking at, say barley grits. If you're interested in that, just make sure if you're wanting true whole grain that it's made with whole barley and not the pearled barley. Those are the two main ones that you're going to see on the market. And again, all the recipes, everything that we're focused on for our Grains Explorer Challenge is going to be with whole barley. So now let's talk about the health benefits of barley. Now the beauty is it's a whole grain. And because it's a whole grain, you get many of your typical benefits with whole grains. That means you have a good amount of fiber, both insoluble and soluble fiber. And then it's also really great for iron, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, zinc, potassium, niacin, vitamin B6, those type of B vitamins. So the benefits of whole grains that we see all the time is the main one they talk about is an excellent source of fiber and that it's good for your heart as well. So like I say here on this channel, whole grains are best and we need to stick with whole grains because of all the benefits. And this is what God created us to eat in the first place. So let's just stick to the closest thing God created for us to eat. So what is it good for? What do you use barley? You have some whole barley. Now what do we use it for? And it's actually used for many, many things. One of the big things that I see is that it's an excellent substitution for rice. And that's even for brown rice. For those of you who are diabetic or need to watch your sugar levels, whole barley is actually lower on the glycemic index than brown rice. So if you're really wanting to watch it, this is an excellent substitute for brown rice. So if you like chicken and rice soup, instead of using the rice, use some barley. Again, this cooks very similar to brown rice. If you know how to cook brown rice, this is very similar. Still takes about 40 to 50 minutes on the stovetop to cook. Soaking it first helps it cook a bit faster. That is a huge thing to consider because I know many of y'all talk about that you're diabetic or someone that you know is diabetic. So this is an excellent grain to use in replacement of rice. It is also excellent to just throw into soups, to stews, you know, all of those things. We hear about like the Roman barley type stew that was given to the gladiators of ancient Roman times. We see it in stews. A lot of people like using it there. You can also just make a porridge from it, just like with any wheat berry, any type of whole grain. You know, you can just boil it down, have it with whatever seasoning you like to have. It's just an easy peasy way to do it. No mill required. Surprisingly though, barley is excellent to use in cakes and cookies. So do you know that by itself as a bread, if you're making barley bread, this does not have a high enough gluten content to get you a nice loaf. So barley, if you're making barley bread, you usually have to mix it in with a hard wheat for all those who are milling ourselves in order to give it that structure for a good barley bread. So it can be used in breads, but because of that, it is a lighter, softer wheat. And so you can use it in cookies and even in cakes. In fact, I've actually seen a recipe from Sue Becker in her Homegrown Flour book, as well as from Michael Gropp. I've interviewed Michael here on this channel. She uses whole grains, and both of them actually have cookie recipes using barley. I haven't tried it out myself personally, but I do plan on to this month. And so surprisingly, you can use it in those type of baked goods. It has a nice soft texture, but still has a bit of a nutty flavor to it. So there you go. You have met barley. So again, this is our first one of our Grains Explorer Challenge. You have met the grain, and I am so excited for this challenge because it's definitely going to be a challenge for me as well to get me out of my comfort zone, to explore these grains that I'm not familiar with. So I hope to see you in the Grainy Bunch so we can talk shop there. And grainsandgrit.com/grainsexplorer to check out all the details with this challenge, to see what grains we're going to be using, and to sign up for the Grainy Bunch for the full adventure. As always, I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and here's to 2024, and I'll see you next week. Bye.